Welcome to Paul's Passive House. So it's finally time for me to address the floors. It's an aspect of this project that I didn't really anticipate. I knew I'd be doing something to the floors. I knew I was going to have to insulate them, but I just couldn't remember how bad they actually were until I uncovered them. Here you see me taking off the bottom few inches of all the trim. I had to clean all this area out and get it ready because when I pour a floor leveler, I have to put up some kind of barrier, some sort of buffer, tape or foam or something. And the easiest way to do that was to just cut everything off about 2, 3, 4 inches from the floor. It might surprise you to learn that there's actually a lot of detail work. Cleaning is difficult work and there's a lot that needs to be done. You have to get all the debris and all the little pieces and all the little nails and all the little everything out of every little possible corner. So finally I've got my floor leveler out and I'm trying to get some idea as to how much floor leveler I'm going to have to pour and how deep. The transition there at the door is from the original footprint of the house into an addition, and it's very challenging to figure out exactly how I'm going to handle that. After I mess around for a little while, I decide it's time to clean the floor. Keeping a good, clean floor, especially when I'm going to be using a leveler and pouring, is very important. I have to measure and mark this entire floor up, and I have to make sure that when I use my level that there isn't any debris underneath it. I'm getting really accurate measurements. So keeping everything clean is very important. Now it's time for me to install the foam backer. I'm stapling this to the studs, and this is going to prevent the floor leveler from going underneath the wall or going into another room. It creates essentially a dam or a seal, and it keeps all the floor leveler in this room, which is very important, especially if you're on the second floor of a house or an apartment building or whatever. You really don't want this floor leveler traveling from one room to another or going between floors. It can create a huge mess. Now that I'm finished up with the barrier, it's time for me to address this crack. Now, as I was saying, this is a transition between the old footprint of the house and an addition. The addition is a big master bedroom, and while it's poorly designed, it's actually going to be very useful for me during this remodel. But you can see there's a lot of old concrete that was put in this crack as a patch. I have to remove all of this and get it free of debris so that when I pour the floor leveler, it makes a nice level surface over this transition. Again, it's really important to keep everything clean. I'm going to take a lot of time and vacuum up all this debris. Before actually marking up the floor and doing a pour, I'm going to vacuum more than once, maybe 2 or 3 more times. It's time for me to put in aggregate. Now for this project, I decided to start with pea gravel and fill up all those gaps with the gravel. From there, I'm going to add sand. Now, pea gravel is a fantastic tool when pouring concrete or leveler or anything like that. It provides a very nice sturdy base that you can tamp down and lock the gravel in place before you put concrete over it. It's what I used in my old HVAC ducts that you saw earlier. However, for this particular crack, I decided to start with pea gravel and then I was going to put sand in after that. And that turned out to be a mistake. If I had to do this over again, I would have filled this crack with just sand. I would have kept pouring sand into this crack until I couldn't pour it anymore and leveled it out with my finger and then poured the floor leveler over that. At this stage, it's time for me to put the sand in place, and I cleaned the floor before doing this. What sand does is it provides you with a very tight foundation to utilize to make the pour. You can also mix sand in with floor leveler to make it cover larger spaces. So if you're using hundreds and hundreds of pounds of floor leveler, then you can mix it with sand so that you don't have to buy so much floor leveler. Now, I didn't do that for this particular project. I just used this sand to fill the gap here. And then you'll see I'm going to make a berm. Now this berm is going to stop the floor leveler from passing over this transition and running into the addition. I don't want this floor leveler to go past this berm, and that's what it's for. When I pour the leveler, it will stop at this berm and then harden from there. Once it's hard, then I can modify it however I need to make it level or to take off whatever lip might be there. But using a sand berm like this really allows me to seal off this room. It's very similar to what the foam provides. It's basically just a big dam. Don't forget to take a break and give Bronson a good hug. He's a good boy. Now it's time to clean up all the stray pieces of sand and gravel and anything that got away from me as I go through the final steps before I start marking up the floor. Now you get some idea as to how I marked up the floor. With my trusty 8-foot level, I put one end of the level at the high point of the floor and then use shims and a marker to measure the distance between the bottom of the level and the floor. Moving out in a pie-shaped pattern, I put the shims under one side of the level until it shows that the level is level. Then I measure the distance between the bottom of the level and the floor and mark the floor with the measurement. I do this in about 2-foot increments. Then, where I see the same measurement at 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and deeper, I connect the dots. So if I see 1/4 of an inch, I connect the dot. If I see a 1/2 inch, I connect the dot. This gives me tiers of depth. Now I can accurately measure the floor to find out how many bags of leveler I need. This gives me good square footage averages or estimations, and it shows me also during the pour where the deepest parts are going to be, where I'm going to need more bags, and so on. And it'll help me move the leveler around. Doing these rings like this really maps out the floor nicely and gives me a really good topographical understanding of the floor. Now that I've got a firm understanding of exactly how this pour should go, I'm really getting excited because I'm going to start pouring pretty soon. Using this and some basic algebra, I was able to determine exactly how many bags I would need for this room's pour. And it ended up being roughly 10, which sounds like a lot, and it is. So I've just completed the pour, and as you can see, the floor is still wet. I used these measuring sticks, which glue down to the floor, and have little notches on them showing me how deep the pour is. That way I was able to level everything out and move the floor leveler around so that it would be the proper depth. It looks pretty good. If we pause here for a moment, we can see that I've already poured what is about 10 bags on this floor. Now, if you recall, there was a seam running down the middle from the top corner to the bottom corner of this floor, and that was the deepest part of the floor. I mapped out this floor the exact same way as I showed you in the other bedroom, except this didn't have tiers where it got deeper and deeper the further away from the door you were. This actually had a valley. It had a deep spot running diagonally through the middle. And if you look at the pour, you can see where I filled it in. Now, you should keep in mind that floor leveler comes in different varieties. Some of it's for a base pour, like what you're looking at here, and other of it, what I'm going to pour in this video, is actually a top layer. They have different consistencies, they're a slightly different mix, and they're made for slightly different purposes. Make sure you read about the kind of floor leveler you're using so that you know what you get. Taking a look, you can see as we go across this pour, it turned out pretty good. It's slick. It's a slick product. It's easy to work with, as you'll see, and other than being heavy, it's a real cinch. Here are the tools I'll be using. I've got a squeegee here, and I've got a spiked roller. Here's an area that I'm going to have to take special attention with. If we pause there for a moment, that raised area that you see there had to be grinded down with a grinder, and then once it was down to a level that I thought I could cover with this floor leveler, I stopped grinding and just measured for the pour. Taking a closer look at some of these pegs, you can see that that initial pour already is 1 inch deep. One last look before I go outside and show you my work area. Here is some fresh water and another marked bucket. This is a pre-marked bucket. I pre-marked and pre-measured all the buckets. The mark that you see below the water line is the minimum amount of water, and all the water above that is the maximum. I'm going to be using a 2x4 and a mixing bucket, and then there are pre-filled buckets for each individual bag. And of course, the drill. It's a special drill that I had to get just for this, with a special attachment or a drill bit for the mix itself. One last look. I don't know why, but I get nervous right before I start a project. And let's begin, shall we? So first I take one of the buckets. It's already got the amount of water in it I need for a bag. Pour it into my mixing bucket, which is a special bucket that I got from the distributor of the floor leveler. I'll use the 2x4 to prep the bag for pouring. If you lay the bag across the 2x4, you can cut it, and as you'll see, you can open it very, very easily. Once the bag's open, it takes just a little bit of work to get the 2x4 out of there, but the bag easily pours into the bucket. Now it's time to grab the drill, and here we go. You can see initially that it takes a bit of work to get the water and the floor leveler to mix. After a while though, it starts to liquefy, and the bag itself actually has instructions that you need to follow exactly. That's why I pre-measured for all of these buckets, and that's why you can't tell, but I'm counting in my head the exact number of seconds that I need to mix. If I remember correctly, it's 60 seconds per bag. It's a little bit hard to see on the camera, but you're looking for a very specific consistency. There's a certain roll to it as you move the drill bit around. And once you get that exact consistency, then you know you're ready to go. You're also counting up to 1 minute in your head, which helps. I want to start in this corner over here. For some reason, though, I'm confused. So confused that I have to scratch my head twice. What the heck? Oh yeah, that's right. I gotta go grab that thing. That stupid thing is stuck. Why is everything so hard? Anyway, now I've got the thing. I don't know if you could tell or not, but I'm no pro. The bucket, the thing, the pouring, all of it, it's still kind of awkward for me. You can see how fluid the consistency is. It's a very liquid pour. It's not like concrete at all. Now it's time for me to grab the spiky roller and start moving the mixture around. What those spikes do is it breaks up the surface tension at the top of the pour of the material, and it allows it to flow freely into wherever it needs to go, downhill mostly. One of the key factors to a pour like this is you have to cover the entire floor if you want a uniform surface. I'm having a little bit of trouble moving it into that corner, so I'm going to get my squeegee and help it along a little bit. The squeegee also works when you're trying to mix two pours together. It helps to sort of flatten out some of the ridges that you get when you've got a partially cured pour with a fresh pour. You can see here I'm moving it into that corner. I'm going to pile it into that corner and then use the spiky roller to break the surface tension, and then from there it'll flow back out of the corner. Now that it's piled into the corner, I'm going to release the surface tension and it's going to flow back towards me. I'm really taking my time with this first pour because I want to understand more how this flows. It's a different product than the last pour that I did. It's got a little bit different properties. It flows a little bit differently. And so I took quite a bit of time with this first bucket to really understand how it was going to set up and how easy or difficult it was to move around. To flatten out the top, I'm going to turn the squeegee upside down and pull it along gingerly so that it makes a nice smooth finish. It's time to mix the second bucket. Marrying the two pours together, the two buckets together, is very important. You want to start by adding the new material to the old material. Now, it's not as important as what you might read about on the internet or whatever, but it is important to do a good job of rolling these two buckets together, especially where they meet. I've had Kanye West and Limp Bizkit in my head all day. I watched a documentary about Limp Bizkit. I don't know why. I've always hated Limp Bizkit, and I haven't been able to get that stupid song out of my head. So I watched another documentary, FD Signifier, went into my truck, turned on some Kanye West, and now I've got that song in my head, Through the Wire. It's a good song, but it's really hard to like Kanye. He's just past my time in hip-hop. I had an era that I was interested in, mostly as a youth. I still like that era, and Kanye came later, but FD Signifiers got me listening to him. By the way, I highly recommend FD Signifier. If you get the chance, he's got some fantastic content on YouTube. Here you see me smoothing everything out, moving everything out. I'm trying to close out this end of the room so that I don't have to pour back into that space. And I want to make sure that everything is flat and even. And I'm using those green sticky pegs to really monitor how deep I'm going for each area and to smooth everything out and even it out throughout that space. Time to mix the third bucket. Again, I start by rolling where the two buckets meet, the new bucket and the old bucket, and then I try to roll where it's deepest so that it releases the surface tension and flows into a space where it's shallower. These buckets, as you pour them, the floor leveler spreads out at a very specific rate. It's actually part of the literature that you read on these floor levelers, is the viscosity spreads out at a uniform rate. So using this roller with the spikes on it helps to maintain that rate all the way to the edge. And you want that edge to be very, very small, like 1/8 of an inch or less. And that's actually part of the big difference between the first type I used and the second type. Here I am cutting another bag, showing you the 4th bag. Gotta mix it down real good. Add a little bit extra water. And it's time to marry. Now, I've got 2 wet spots to work with, and I'm gonna split up the floor now. I wanna get this raised edge that I had to grind down addressed. I wanna make sure I have enough to address it. So I started there. And now I have to marry that pool with the other pool, and you'll see me do that. I started by pouring where the old bucket or the previous bucket was already poured, and then I'm gonna roll that in and then connect the 2 pools. Now here again, I'm using the squeegee to move more material. I need that material to connect, and I need it to be uniform at the surface. So you can see it moving around. I'm moving it around, pushing it to where I need it to be. It's very important that you make sure that all of it connects. You want one solid surface. The first pour that I didn't tape it. I didn't record it because I didn't know exactly what the best method would be for that. Now this, after 1 pour or maybe 2 pours, I know what I need to capture. I'm going to mix, I believe this is the final bag. This might be the second to last bag. And as you can see, it flows out at a very uniform rate, and I'm just relieving surface tension so it maintains that rate and gets as wide of a pool as possible. Now you get a lot of coverage when you have another floor leveling product pre-poured beneath it. This is like a top cover. This is a top coat. And this product really flows out nicely. Checking my work a little bit. I want to make sure that everything looks good, and it does. I noticed that I'm getting some leakage in that corner, and you'll see that later. And now I finally have just a little bit left, and I'm gonna walk my way out of this room. Now, I don't actually need to get any leveler on that high point that I'm standing on. That's the highest point of the floor, and it doesn't actually need any. What I need to focus on is feathering out what is poured so that it's only a 1/16 of an inch difference, and that's all the larger that little bump is. Any vinyl plank or cork or any underlayment or anything that I put over that isn't going to worry too much about a 1/16 of an inch. Now that I've got it all spread out, it's time to take the tools out and clean them, and then clean the floor. You definitely want to get this stuff up and off your floor or off of your walkway, off of any materials. Once it hardens, it's much more difficult to get off. And that's it. I'm pretty satisfied with the project. We'll stop back later to find out how it went. And you can see here, there's where some of it leaked out from inside the house. If you'd like a free energy efficiency consultation, please email me at paulspassivehouse@gmail.com.